right? High 2000s, low
Yep.
3000s. Over the weekend, obviously not much going on, right? But then today, so last Monday, right, which is included last weekend, it was 8,500. So divided by 3 is 2,000 to 3,000, right? You know. Today, it was 13,000 divided by 3.
Yep.
So now we're looking at 4 to 5.
And it's only going to get worse.
Yep. The 7-day average on Friday was 31.15, and now it's 38.75. So we're going back up. Kaylee's got COVID. Coworkers, kids got COVID.
Although, I mean, half the people I work with caught COVID in the 2 weeks after I caught COVID, despite the fact that I have not even met any of them since then.
Yep.
In person.
I guess I'm sticking to my outside only.
Yep.
Stuff.
Nope. Even now, we're still not
game with my strongest mask, and that's it.
Hockey games are the only things I'm even doing. And after hockey,
The strongest mask is I know has worked. I went to a bunch of hockey games.
yeah. All right. I hit record. I think we're good to go. I'm already live, so let's do this. I assume you've hit record.
Yeah, when you said hit record the first time.
Okay. It's Tuesday, May 10th, 2021. Oops. Why did I say that? It's Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about the Playdate. It's a tiny little gaming console. So, many of you know we are fans of the old stick puck, that game where a bunch of people put blades on their feet and move around on some ice, trying to make a little piece of rubber go into one of two opposing nets with sticks and fisticuffs. It's a great sport.
It is popular, but it is not the most popular.
I want to say it's still the 4th most popular sport in the United States, last I checked.
I guess it's weird because actually...
Not counting esports, because esports are more popular than even like American football, but that's a whole separate...
If you add them all together, then yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's actually interesting. MLS in the U.S., which is basically rising in like number of fans popularity and like attendance popularity more rapidly than the NHL is. And so depending on how you consider it, you might say it is or soon will be the 4th biggest professional sports league in the U.S., but its revenues compared to the NHL are not remotely close. The NHL has way more money. So,
well, because while there are fewer people who care about hockey, those people care a lot about hockey on average, in my experience.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the TV deal, right? NHL has big TV deals, and the MLS doesn't have as big a TV deals. The MLS has bigger stadiums, more seats, fewer games than the NHL, which has like an 82-game season.
But if you're in a market where people care about hockey, there is a scary percentage of the people who want to go to games who will pay almost anything for one of those seats, even for like some regular game.
Or, there's certain places where that's not true.
Yeah, I was talking about specific markets,
Ducks.
like go try to see the Leafs in Toronto, even when they're
That's the hardest. That's literally the biggest
Yep.
one.
Even when they're
That's
sucking
the
it up,
hardest one.
last place in the league, sold out games. That is hockey.
Anyway.
So, we, of course, Rangers are in the playoffs. This is the most playoff ready they've been in a long, long time. They were a really good team.
Had playoffs since like 2017 here, and there was a pandemic, and there was so it's like since we started being able to afford portion of season tickets, right? We can't afford season tickets.
We split a half season across like 6 people.
Yeah, a lot of people. But since we've had tickets, right, they really haven't made... I think the first season we bought like 10 games of tickets. We were able to go to one playoff game, right, in the first series, and that was it. They finally made it. So I knew we weren't going to win the cup. The chances of that were really weak, because even if we miraculously made it to like the conference finals, it's like, well, Carolina's going to destroy us. And if we make it to the finals in a double miracle, Colorado's going to destroy us.
Colorado has swept their first round, and every other, literally, except the Rangers, every other matchup in the entire NHL is currently tied at 2 games each. The Rangers are unique in that they're losing 3-1 and might be eliminated.
Nashville, who got swept by Colorado.
Yeah. So not too bad. Also, we're better than all the teams who didn't make it into the playoffs. But
the other half of the league, right?
Yep.
We're in the top half. But yeah, I expected us, though, to make the second round. We did well against the Penguins in the regular season.
Yeah.
We're healthier than we were during portions of the regular season, right? But
a bunch of stuff. The games didn't go well for a lot of reasons. We won't turn this into the hockey show, but suffice it to say, the Rangers barely lost the first game in a like record-setting overtime that Emily and I were at. We didn't get home until like midnight 30 after that game. It was a real fun time, but it was amazing when that goal was scored in basically the third period of a second whole-ass hockey game that we watched.
Yep.
The game ended, and suddenly
price of one.
It went from one of the loudest arenas I have ever been in at any point in my life to silent for about 10 seconds, followed by this very quiet grumbling as everyone just simultaneously stood up and funneled out of that arena at midnight. Nobody was saying a word except for one Pens fan who was very classily just standing there clapping. It was beautiful.
What else are you gonna,
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's not like a game in Philly where like people just start throwing batteries at you.
Yeah, I mean, in that game, the margin was close, but in the last 2 games we played.
Yeah, so game 1, ridiculous overtime.
Embarrassed. We just got shredded.
Game 1, ridiculous overtime. Game 2, the Rangers crush them. Game 3, real close. Game 4, the Rangers get.
Game 3 wasn't.
Well,
kind of close. A little.
The Rangers were fucking it up. They came back big with a big comeback, but they couldn't actually win the game. And then the last game was, I even stopped watching just to shreds. The Rangers are choking. It's not, it might be the goal. Like, I don't know, Igor, one of the best, brightest stars of goaltending in the league, might just be choking in the playoffs. It's hard to say what's happening.
Who knows?
There's a lot going on.
I was expecting us to be able to see 4 or 5 playoff. All I wanted was more playoff hockey games to go to, right? That was all I wanted.
Yeah. Playoff hockey's real exciting, even when you're losing.
We're going to probably get 3, and if we're extremely, extremely lucky, right? I mean, like we could. There's still a possibility of more, but it's looking like 3. And the third one's tomorrow. So.
Anything can happen in the playoffs, and playoff hockey in the NHL tends to be. There are several upsets every year, but I do not feel like
back from a 3-1 deficit in a previous year, many years ago. So
also the reverse happens. The Toronto Maple Leafs are famous for fucking up 3-0 leads in series. So we'll see, but I'm not holding my breath. I will bet a nickel that the Rangers win the game we go to tomorrow, because there's a nickel currently sitting on my desk that as I look at it right now, one, where the fuck did it even come from? I'm actually not sure why this nickel is here. I think it was like under my monitor stand and something pushed it out. But 2, I'm willing to risk that nickel because, frankly, I should just throw that nickel away. Like, what am I going to do with a nickel?
Give it to a desperate person on the street who would be very happy to receive it.
What could they even do with a nickel?
It would add up slowly with all the other change they're getting, and eventually they'd be able to buy something.
I don't know. A nickel almost rounds down to 0. That metal might be worth more if I hucked it at someone.
I save all my spare change, and then when I take it to the bank, it's like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, we did that once, and that giant thing ended up being almost $1,000. And now I don't ever.
Too long.
But now I don't collect any change because I don't use cash ever.
I hardly ever.
In fact, you know what else is on my desk? My wallet. You know what is in the wallet? The same cash that was in the wallet at PAX East before COVID happened, and 60 pounds, because that's what I put in my wallet before I went to London. Didn't use any of that either.
I've used some cash, but I haven't. My cash using has gone way, way, way down. So, but I have gotten some change recently from things. So
I don't think there's anything I've used change for in a year. Like, I don't think I'll even use cash again at any point. In fact, in London, most places are credit only, or card only, or phone only. They don't take any cash.
What do people who don't have any card, unbanked people do?
Nothing. You just can't go do business in those places anymore. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying that's what happened.
It's bad. Anyway.
Cedar Point also went cashless.
Gaming news going on. We haven't done a gaming show in a long time, I guess, right? I can't even remember.
So we'll go through a few big newses that we just gotta talk about. And first and probably the most important long-term, is this news about FIFA and EA.
Well, it's not I don't think it's the biggest of our newses, but
I think it's the biggest news in terms of the money involved.
Yeah, so I don't know what there was a big dispute of some kind, right? That I didn't even realize was happening. EA has been making the FIFA soccer game for 30 years, something like that, right?
I mean, EA, it's in the game. They make the whatever sport, whatever year game. They just crank those things out year after year, and those things sell like crazy.
Right. I mean, at various times, they're like, I don't think EA, like the NBA and the MLB, like there's like MLB The Show, and there were like like at various times, EA, I guess they may have, I don't know if at any point did they actually have the exclusive license to all major sports leagues simultaneously? I don't know.
I feel like they did, but I'm not sure, and I'm gonna have to look into that.
But it's like, the leagues have moved around, some of them having non-exclusive licenses, right? I remember times when like you could buy, like there were several different football and hockey games you could buy that were all officially licensed and from several different publishers, right? Because they weren't exclusive licenses.
Yep.
But EA sort of, started the whole exclusive license deal, right? Madden is the NFL game. You can make a football game if you want, but it can't have, NFL teams, logos, trademarks, player names, anything, right? Because we have the exclusive deal. And so they have had the exclusive deal for FIFA soccer for 30 years. And it's like their biggest game, the biggest moneymaker for EA. And now that license has been lost. So presumably the next version is going to be called, that was like something FC, right?
Yep. It said name change, and the article is a little bit sketch on any of the details.
It says it's something FC, right? But for football club. But but the point is, it's not gonna have FIFA team names, player names, right? I guess they're not allowed to have that in there now. We'll see.
Well, because FIFA's launching their own new soccer video games with, it just says third-party studios and publishers. And they're also targeting, I get the impression, they're going to make a bunch of different soccer-themed games all over the place and all sorts of different platforms, because it also says they're making, quote, several non-simulation games were already in production and will launch in the third quarter of this year.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to be like, all right, are people going to play these, it's like FIFA is garbage. Really, it's a perfectly fine soccer game. The garbage part of it is the microtransaction gambling part. Without that part, FIFA's actually pretty decent. The only feature I would like to see FIFA add is the same feature I would like all team sports games to add, which is a multiplayer mode where one player is one person, right? It's like, why can't we play 11 on 11 internet real-time soccer? Why is that not a thing?
Because most of the people would be doing something very boring most of the time, and it's actually not fun.
Maybe your sport is boring and unfun then. Anyway, it's like, why don't you play 9-on-9 baseball online? Stand in the outfield isn't maybe baseball itself has a problem, because you know what? 5-on-5 real-time basketball is a thing. There is an NBA game that does that. It just also has gambling and microtransactions.
I mean, there's Rocket League, and the whole team is out there. Overwatch.
Rocket League is the perfect team sports video game. It is flawed in no way. Anyway, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see, will people continue playing the game that is actually a decent game, and maybe they're also addicted to the gambling loot box part of it or not, right?
Yep.
But doesn't have their favorite teams, logos, etc. Or will people go and play presumably garbage games, right, that happen to be officially licensed by FIFA and all their favorite soccer players and teams are there?
Now, before before anyone out there decides on their opinion, I'm just going to read a statement that looks like it's from the FIFA president. That is just really funny in terms of how they phrase this. Quote, "I can assure you that the only authentic real game that has the FIFA name will be the best one available for gamers and football fans." End quote.
So, I mean, I'm not saying it's likely, but it's like that they could surprise us and come out with an amazing game.
They could. We're also going to find out.
But the fact that FIFA's behind it doesn't give you any confidence whatsoever, but it's possible.
We're also going to find out how much
tomorrow.
how much the mapping to the real world players matters versus the game itself. I'll bet you see the player base split almost right down the middle. Because I remember as a kid, I had friends who every year bought whatever NHL 97 came out, they bought it. NHL 98 came out, they bought it. And they would only play the newest one, and they were mostly people who were very focused on the sport itself. And everyone else just kept playing NHL 97 because it was the most fun one at the time.
I mean, my one cousin had ice hockey, right? The NES one. Another cousin had Blades of Steel, right? We made the poor decision of, I was like, well, I've already played those 2 hockey games. Let me buy the newer Wayne Gretzky one. That was a mistake. Wayne Gretzky hockey for the NES was real bad. And then the N64, I think there was the Wayne Gretzky one, which is good, and there was NHL 99 on the N64. And then I think that's the last digital ice hockey game I've played that was officially licensed by the NHL.
Soccer-wise, there was that one soccer game on the NES that was basically the same graphics and producer and everything. It's in the extended universe of Super Dodgeball. Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty good soccer game, but it was
Mega Man Soccer. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. Mario Strikers. Anyway,
Mario Strikers was actually pretty fun.
Yeah. So what other news we got?
So in some other news, Bethesda, if you were unaware, only Bethesda people care about this. They had a PC launcher like a lot of big companies do. So there was a application you'd run to launch all your Bethesda games and do all your Bethesda gaming stuff. Just like I have this Battle.net launcher for Blizzard, and I have Steam for literally every other game I play, except Fortnite, which has its own launcher that, as far as I'm concerned, only launches Fortnite and can't do anything else. Bethesda, very wisely, has given up on this nonsense, and they are shutting their launcher down and forcing everyone to migrate away, and they made it really easy to do. So right now, if you use the Bethesda launcher, it's going to stop working tomorrow, but you can just log into their website and transfer your entire Bethesda game library, including your DLC, any of your in-game crap, literally everything, seamlessly to Steam. It'll just work on Steam.
Seamless for everyone. There's probably people out there having problems with it, but it's, at least in theory, that's what it's supposed to do. So at least good on them for, making good on paper, right?
Well, so far the reports are people are saying that it seems to mostly work just fine. Only extremely crazy people who care a lot about very specific things that most people don't are having what look like minor problems, especially if they've done anything that has some mods in it. And a big positive, though, is that a bunch of games, as a result of this, are now just available on Steam that were never available anywhere but Bethesda's launcher before.
That's good.
Including Elder Scrolls Arena, Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, some mod creation kit for Fallout 4, the Skyrim Special Edition, Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, etc. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want to play any of those.
No.
It's good that they're available, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, it makes sense to me when you have something like Epic or even EA Origin, which are stores in their own right, and they would want you to use those because that way, if you play some games on their platform, you'll buy other games through their platform and they'll make money, right? So that makes sense to me for a company to put development effort into that.
Yep. It also makes sense if a company has a significant. There's one other area where it makes sense. If the company has a significant
Bethesda or it's like, I guess the Battle.net one does make sense, but it's like these other ones, it's like if you're not turning it into a store, it's like you're putting in all this development resources to make this launcher that only makes your users unhappy.
Well, if you let me finish, the other big use case for this is if your games and your players have a significant community among themselves, and that community is built within your launcher or within your platform. Like the friends I set in Overwatch theoretically could be used in other games. Granted, Overwatch is the only game I play in that launcher. But if I play in other games, I could have my same friends there.
But not all these launchers do that, right? Games I'll play on Steam where it's like I start the game and some launcher appears and then I have to press play, and it's like that launcher doesn't actually do anything except like maybe log into an account for the company that made the game.
Even
like,
Civilization 6, I gotta click on the stupid launcher that Steam launches before Civ 6 starts for literally no reason.
Right. It's like they put development effort into that. It would have been easier to just have the game just start. In fact, the launcher wasn't there originally. They added it after a while, right? Yeah, it's Bethesda, I think, is doing a smart thing here, realizing we're putting all this development effort into the launcher for no reason. Let's stop wasting our resources on that. Let's just, here, you can buy our game on whatever platform and launch it. It's an EXE. Go nuts, right?
Yep. In some other news, Square Enix, which has honestly been in sharp decline for some time now for a bunch of reasons we don't need to get into here.
For the Final Fantasy Online, which is successful.
Yep.
It's like the last MMO.
So they are selling a bunch of the like sub studios they've got, including Crystal Dynamics and Eidos, to Embracer, which is this big like venture capital firm that is buying up like every goddamn game company on earth, as far as I can see.
Embracer is the real news, but like it says two newses here, right? So Square Enix declining further isn't really a big news; it's a medium news.
Oh, the only reason I even bring up Square Enix, other than to point out that they're selling this stuff, is that they're selling these companies in possibly the worst timed move I have ever seen in my entire life to focus on blockchain and blockchain games. Just as
it's full gambling and full coin.
But I want to point out the same day they announced this was the day that the NFT market, and I'm making finger quotes because NFTs are not a market, they're just a scam, collapsed and they're all worth nothing. The whole thing is falling apart just as Square Enix doubled down on that bullshit, which I just find hilarious.
Yeah. The big, huge news, right, is that Embracer Group, which over the past year or few has slowly acquired many nerdy companies of significance, right? Obviously, they haven't acquired the S-tier giant nerd companies.
Yep.
Right? Disney did that. But it's like, if you think about it, right? Disney bought Marvel. Embracer, did they buy DC? No, Warner Brothers owns DC. What did they buy? The second tier down. They bought Dark Horse Comics, right? It's like, what else did Embracer buy, right? They bought Asmodee, the company that was already buying up other board game companies into a big clump, right?
Yeah.
But Asmodee bought Fantasy Fly and all these other board game companies, and then Embracer bought that, the whole set of them, all at once. So Dark Horse and several video game studios are now owned by this one Swedish company that nerds, it's like nerds tend to know about the companies that make nerdy stuff. Like, who the CEO of Nintendo is, right?
Yep. D&D people knew what TSR was for a long time, and now they know Wizards. They know what Wizards is.
You understand at least the culture and messaging.
They know that Wizards is owned by Hasbro. They've heard of Hasbro.
Yeah, the company's face might be a manufactured face by the marketing and PR department, but it's at least a face that you're familiar with. Right? It's like Apple, right? It's like what's going on with Tim Apple, kinda, right? Yeah. Nobody fucking knows. Right? Almost nobody is paying any attention to what the fuck is going on with Embracer Group. We don't know what they're like.
So I got an article from May 2nd. And what it points out is Embracer has now grown to over 14,000 employees, most of whom are game designers and developers from studios they've bought. And they have acquired at least 124 distinct studios in recent memory.
Yep. So all those studios...
I dare anyone listening to the show or anyone I know to name 124 game studios. Name 50, and I will be impressed.
Right. It's like, their name is, I guess, very apt, right? They're embracing. They sure are embracing, right? So there has to be, right? You don't just go around embracing for no reason, right? There has to be that swing is going to swing the other direction at some point. They're going to, aggregate, conglomerate, they got to do, they're going to do something. You don't just buy companies to let them continue operating as they were.
And I'm going to say this is not investment advice. I am not a registered investment advisor, but in my personal opinion, all these companies need to be broken up. These kinds of acquisitions shouldn't even be possible. And this is dangerous to the entertainment ecosystem and the gaming ecosystem, as dangerous as Disney buying every intellectual property.
Yeah, it's like, yes, on the one hand, thanks to the internet, we have plenty of free culture, right? Anyone can just make and distribute their art however they want freely, right? But, just making your own website, it's very difficult to broadcast, right? Even if you have social media where my tweet, if I get enough followers, I could theoretically get my tweet out to as many people as, a famous person does, right? It could happen. Right?
Yeah.
It's not like in the old days where I literally couldn't broadcast on TV, but a rich person could.
Let me see what the most watched GeekNights YouTube video is while you're talking.
Right. But at the same time, having a big giant pile of money, right, allows you to get your message out even with the fact that the internet exists, right? You can hire people to rebroadcast your message, right? You can buy ads and, make other people start broadcasting on more channels on the internet and non-internet and amplify your voice with money. And so these large companies owning so much of our culture, right, end up just controlling a lot of the messages that all of humanity hears, and there's the loudest voices in the room, and it's not a good, world culture to have a few loud voices. It's much better to have lots and lots of medium voices. So.
Yep. So yeah, the most the most watched YouTube video is that Brexit Simpsons thing that I made, but number 2 right after it is designing game rules. That's actually our most popular panel we've ever done on YouTube.
Okay.
150,000-ish views. And a lot of them are kind of recent. It's actually, people are watching it a lot lately.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not. That's, it's like, that's a lot for...
It's a lot for us.
Right. It's like, could you imagine, like, in 1990 something, 2 guys recording a video on a VHS tape and getting 100,000 views, right? Impossible, right?
Yep.
But in this age, 100,000 views is basically... nothing. It's like you're not a million views, you're nothing, right? Even a million views is not too much.
Just our YouTube channel is about 2.5 million views and like 8,000 subscribers. We're not even at the point where they'll send us one of those little plaques. Like, we're not even close to that.
Nope, not even remotely. So I mean, the 8 billion people on the earth, right? And some of those views might be repeat views.
So. In one last news, and I'll be talking about this a lot more, possibly on like special episodes or something, because Scott refuses to play games that are designed to his specifications for some reason. But
I think you need to be misconstruing my specification. Maybe I should start doing that. It's just saying, oh, this game, this is ideal. This is exactly the game Rim wants, even though it's a game that you don't want at all.
Based on the panels and GeekNights episodes we've done. The games that are based on certain older games like Tribes 2 or do things like those games tend to be games you would like. Games that do things that you have said are very good design.
Does it have an absolutely... All right, if you a game like Tribes 2, what the things I liked in Tribes 2,
right.
A map that was fucking enormous.
All right.
Absolutely enormous. Does Overwatch have absolutely enormous?
Oh, no, because Overwatch is not the game that replaces Tribes 2.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about Overwatch 2.
No, I am going to talk about Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2 does not replace Tribes 2 is what I'm saying.
Then why even mention Tribes 2?
Because I am confident if someone made a perfect Tribes 2 FPS like reimagining, you would not actually play it.
If it has a lot of players and it's not a gambling game.
I still don't think you'd play it. Anyway, so Overwatch 2, the technical beta is out, and I've been playing it a lot. And I'm only going to share some very brief thoughts so far, because otherwise the show's going to go way too long. But all the changes they have made are very welcome, and I think it will be a very healthy esports ecosystem. And it's interesting how they are focusing on single-player PvE type stuff to get the kinds of people who bounced off of Overwatch 1 to actually play Overwatch 2. Because the thing that seems to have happened to most competitive FPSs is a huge percentage of the players care about the lore and the story, but actually just want to play a casual game like Fortnite and do not want to have any competition whatsoever.
I mean, that's we've known that for decades already, right?
Yep.
It's like that's all we talk about is how, yeah, there are people who want to compete with other human beings and measure their skills against other human beings and work hard to improve their skills, whether it's a sport or a game or whatever it is, right? There are people who want to do that. And the vast majority of people have no interest in doing that, especially not during their leisure time, right? They consider improving their skills to be like non-leisure, right? It's hard. It's not fun for them, right? They enjoy just, they'll even admit like they enjoy shutting off, right? Not working hard, right? Not, it's like, and they want to do something that is not something that requires effort, but is just a mindless entertainment. And so a game where you grind and your character improves in skills, but you don't, is exactly the psychological thing that most people enjoy doing.
It's very telling that when I play Fortnite with everyone but Scott, because Scott's the only one who won't play it, despite you trying to get us to play PUBG.
I have no problems playing Fortnite as it has
it's free
pay to win. But the only reason I don't play Fortnite is because I could play it on the Switch. I'm not opposed to that, but I wouldn't use a mouse and keyboard, which I'm not going to play an FPS.
You wouldn't be allowed to play with us. We only play in the real mouse and keyboard mode, so you couldn't play anyway.
Well, that's good. I respect that. I would also only play in the real mouse and keyboard mode. But in order to play it on my computer with my mouse and keyboard, I would have to install the Epic Store.
Which I installed because it's completely worth it. That game is super fun.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I already have all the time in my life filled with things. I don't need another thing, so why?
So Overwatch 2, they are going to add all that stuff to get the people who don't want to see the actual number next to their name that shows how good they actually are. So they'll have something to do, which I think is great. But the beta is aimed solely at the competitive, serious players, and they're only testing the competitive, serious mode. And what did they do? Really simple. The teams are now 5v5 instead of 6v6, which really opens up the game. The required composition of the teams is more like a real sport. 1 tank, 2 supports, 2 DPS.
Hold on. In a real sport, right, there is, rarely a large requirement on, roles, right?
One goalie, 2 wings, 1 center, 2 defensemen.
That is not required at all. You can throw out. You could throw. I guess you can't throw out. The only thing that's required is you can't have more than 1 goalie.
Yeah, that is true.
You could put out 6 defensemen.
You absolutely could.
And you could do whatever the hell you want.
And they are experimenting with that mode too.
You could put on, right? It's like you could intentionally.
So Scott, baseball. There's specific roles. You can't say, well, we're not going to put a third baseman out. We're going to have 2 second basemen. You can't do that.
Well, hold on. You do have to submit a lineup and designate someone like as third baseman or whatever. But like
they could run over there.
They could stand wherever the fuck. You could have all your people stand in the outfield if you wanted to.
Yep.
There's no rule against that, right?
But
the only thing that's required is a pitcher, a catcher, and 7 other people. Right?
So to make the analogy to ice hockey, what this actually does to the game is the team composition is built around the tank, and the tank, if you're on defense, like if they're in your offensive or they're in the offensive zone, like you're on defense, the tank is basically the goalie, and that's the weird special one that everything's built around, and the rest of the team is trying to sort of get out of the defense zone back on offense. But when you're on attack, imagine if in ice hockey, as soon as you take the zone, the goalie was allowed to cross the center line with their pads on, and they were allowed to hit people without penalties. That's kind of what it feels like now. The goalie just charges the other line and starts beating the fuck out of people. It's ending up being real fun, but it's forcing really interesting tactics. And by only having 1 tank, the game never turns into a big death ball sort of blob of people just grinding out a fight. The fighting is way more skill-based, way more positioning-based, way more open. Every individual player's skill matters way more, not less. And as a result, what I'm already seeing is people who are not serious about playing the game to win will not enjoy Overwatch 2. It is an esport and nothing else, and I think every other aspect of the game...
They'll play that other mode.
They'll play that other mode, and I think it's very noteworthy that they're not even bothering beta testing that other mode right now.
I don't think you need to beta test that other mode.
Because it doesn't need to be balanced. Who cares? You're going to level up your character. Who gives a shit? That's a mode I will probably never see.
Yep.
So what I'm going to link to is a video that outlines every change they made to the characters, because if you only have
continue to make drastic changes, and that in a year it'll look completely different, right?
Oh yeah, they are very willing to change the rules to make the game competitive and interesting, and I am very much looking forward to the full release of Overwatch 2.
I do have a concern, though, that it's like, yeah, they're going to do about as, I mean, I guess whatever's left of Blizzard, right? Who's still there at this point, right? But, considering that they've had, whoever's left there has managed to do this much, if they can carry it forward, but if it doesn't succeed financially, right? This could be like sort of the beginning of the end for the truly competitive digital games, right? Not that there won't be esports and games that people compete at, but they won't be fair, balanced, truly competitive games. They'll be like, Fortnite tournament or whatever.
Yeah, they're not gonna be Rocket League. As big as Rocket League esports is, it is tiny compared to other esports because it is a serious full skill game, and a lot of people can't handle that. Both players and spectators.
Stuff like that. Anyway.
Yep. Meanwhile, what am I saying? I will watch people do competitive races of Final Fantasy IV randomizers, so there's no accounting for taste if that's what I'm into.
I mean, the fighting game community is still there holding it down, right?
Yep. And one last news, not gaming related, but we have to mention it because it's too important. As you might have seen, the U.S. Supreme Court is full of fascists now. They're going to end abortion rights in America. This is an absolute disaster. This is going to cause a lot of death. This is just devastating. And all I want to say about this is, if you're somehow not aware of this, how dare you find out about this from GeekNights if you live in the United States? Like, how dare you? And two, there are protests outside of Republican senators' houses, and there are protests outside of the houses of the fascists on the Supreme Court. And all I want to say about that is the right way to go, because there is no way to vote our way out of this right now. And this is the tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen.
And if you have a better idea, share with the class.
There's a line I saw an activist say that I'm starting to repeat everywhere, and I think it's really important to say. And to paraphrase, it was basically, people have thrown bricks to get change in the world. People have voted to get change in the world. Sometimes voting works without throwing bricks. Sometimes you got to vote and throw bricks. But just throwing bricks never fixes anything. So if you are the kind of person who gets to the point to where in self-defense you feel like you need to throw bricks, I'm not going to say you shouldn't. No, a white dude with money can never tell anyone.
Say you should.
No, I'm just saying, if you are throwing bricks in self-defense because you are under deadly threat, I am not the person who should tell you not to do that. However, if you're going to throw bricks, you gotta also vote. Voting takes so little, and if enough of you vote, it can also be the other thread of how, like, it's the second front that you have to do. If you're just throwing bricks and not voting, you're not helping.
Right. All right. When you go to vote, you have to basically consider, right? There's a lot of people out there, right, who are like, they're not happy with the actual choices of the people they have.
Yeah, you think I'm happy? You think I liked voting for Adams for the mayor of New York City? Right. He was my third to last choice.
It doesn't fucking matter, right? The point is that you have to accept the shitty reality is that what you're voting for is there's two choices. One vote, at least in the United States, there's two choices, right? One choice is I am voting to make voting continue to be a thing that's real and matters. And the other choice is, we're going to, this might be the last time my vote is actually counted. And, or at least,
that's not hyperbole. Voting for a Republican in America means you are saying that I want this to be the last vote I ever make.
Right. The voting will become something like, what they have in, Russia, where it's like, even if Putin loses, he wins. It doesn't matter. Right?
Yep. So in the primaries, vote for whoever's the most radical progressive that does exactly what you want. Like pull him left. But in the regular election, you vote for a Democrat no matter how shitty they are, because that...
No matter how small or big the election is, if you're in the United States and you have the right to vote, that's what you got to do.
We live in one of the most progressive, like, metropolis...
Even if the person is a piece of shit. Like, even if you're in West Virginia, it's like, you fucking vote for Joe Manchin. What are you going to do, right?
Yep, because the alternative is literal fascism.
Right? It's like,
All right. And on a downer right there. All right, things of the day. Not to butt anyway that downer, but anyway, it's time for things of the day. So this is a interesting little video. It's one of those things where someone found an old documented case of someone made a bicycle where if you pedal, it spins a big propeller. Which sounds like
an idea someone would have in a time that was less technologically advanced than our current time.
Yeah, like look at old flying machines and just imagine
old attempts to fly machines.
Yeah, like the thing where all those videos of people jumping off the Eiffel Tower and just falling to their deaths because none of these things could have ever possibly worked. But yeah, so the person who made in old times, this propeller bicycle claimed that they could consistently get it to go 20 miles an hour on flat ground. So, which is not a fast speed for a bike, but that's faster than like the average person on a bicycle rides their little bike around. So
it's not a fast speed for a modern bike. Try to get any older bike to go 20
Get a penny farthing to go 20 miles an hour and not kill yourself when you try to stop.
Also we go 20 miles an hour on our bikes, on our modern bikes with effort on a nice road or a nice surface, right? So on a shitty old bike on a shitty surface, right? 20 miles an hour is tough.
But a propeller bike? All right. So this YouTube video, they made a propeller bike. You pedal, spins the propeller. They tried to make it work. They tried to ride it. And then they got a professional bike racer to ride this bike around. And I'm not going to spoil it, but you learn some interesting things. The only thing I will spoil is propeller bikes are a terrible fucking idea.
Pikachu.jpg.
Yep.
Everybody knows that.
But the video is fun, especially when the real serious cyclist gets on the bike and what he says it feels like when he's trying to ride it is very funny. And if you are a cyclist, you know exactly what it feels like to ride this bike after you hear him describe it.
Yep. Anyway, so, one thing, I think I might have done a thing of the day once where a guy from an avocado farm was like, this is why when you take the pit out of the avocado, you can't just plant it and get a good, tasty avocado. You get a disgusting one, right? Did I make that a thing of the day?
I'm pretty sure you did, because apples, we talked about it too. There was a good thing of the day about the apple problem.
Yeah. So, I'm always thinking, my whole life, I've been thinking like, hey, what, you buy fruits and vegetables, they got seeds in them, right? So you buy a pepper, it's got fucking seeds all over, right? Well, if you plant those, are they going to grow into peppers or not, right? And the answer varies, right? It might not, or it might make something disgusting, or it might, make the fruit or vegetable that you bought, right? Or it might be hard to grow where you live, who knows? But what about grains? I never really thought about trying to plant a grain, right? It's like you most of the time, because when you buy grain, it doesn't come in a plantable form. You buy some flour, you can't plant flour.
Yeah.
It's already milled, right? It's like the end, right? It's not a wheat anymore. And I don't even know if that part of the wheat is the part you would plant, right?
Well, also, you know what's going to grow out of that if you plant it? Mushrooms.
Yeah, right? But what about rice? Can you buy a rice and plant it? So in this YouTube video, somebody documents the process by which they took some brown rice that they bought and planted it and tried to grow some rice in some buckets and then harvest and eat the rice. They did not get a lot of rice, but they got some rice, and it's pretty impressive and interesting to see how rice grows, because I've only ever really seen rice, in a large agricultural setting on rice paddies. I've never seen
It's a big part of the Evangelion reboots, that rice.
Yeah, I've never seen individual rice plants growing on their own. And that was pretty fascinating. So, and if you want to try to grow rice, here's a good how-to for you, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get a lot of quantity though.
Yeah. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book is Nine Fox Gambit. In a few weeks, we'll probably do the show. I'm burning through it. I like it. Like, Scott's already read it. And what I'll say for you, the listener, is one, it's violent. There's
you got to tell the listener about the book. They chose it. They know everything about it.
Oh, yeah. I'm just reminding you to remember how violent it is. But the way I describe it, having read enough of it now to sort of like get a sense of where it's going, insofar as you can in a sci-fi book this dense, it feels like in the culture books where there's this like extremely abstracted world and these extremely far future concepts, and there'll be a mention or a brief scene of like a battle or a war, and you get a very short like zoom in on what the war is like, but then it zooms back out because it's not focused on that. This book feels like if you took one of those culture book like epic space wars and zoomed all the way in on it and focused on it.
Mm-hmm.
That will only make sense if you have read like all of the culture books and started reading Nine Fox Gambit. But that's what it feels like. And I'm digging it. It's scratching.
And the ships have names just like culture.
Yeah.
Right?
I had the itch of reading weird far future sci-fi just hit me like a brick after reading a little bit of this book. I'm feeling big spaceships, big weird aliens that make it impossible to adapt things into television format. You're only going to get these in books.
Sequel.
Yeah, I will probably read that sequel.
As is tradition.
Also, soon we're going to read the sequel to The City We Became, which I feel like I'm going to read that within a day of it coming out, kind of like how
that I'll actually read for sure.
Kind of like when back when the Prince of Nothing books were coming out at an actual cadence. I'm pretty sure they're just no more going to come out at this point. But I remember when the second one in that duology came out, I think I finished it 48 hours after it appeared on my Kindle. Otherwise, COVID numbers are rising. We ain't going anywhere. No conventions for the foreseeable future. I even canceled my trip to Sweden, so that's not going to happen.
Well, I guess you won't meet the Embracer group then.
Nope. I bet I could have gotten a meeting with them. I got some contacts. I bet I could have. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the Playdate, which, full disclosure, I do not have and currently have not ordered. Like, I do not plan to get one. But
all right, so
I do think this concept is super intriguing, and I'm very interested in it.
So the deal is a company, which you may not realize, is called Panic, right? Like, I'm panicking. Oh, holy crap, my house is on fire. Panic, right? The Panic company makes, right, some development tools. They have a thing called Nova, which is like a code editor for the Mac, right? I guess if you don't want to use one of the popular ones. They got one called Transmit. That's a SFTP, FTP, S3 file transfer client for Mac. They got a thing called Prompt, which is an SSH client for iOS. I use Blink Shell. I don't use Prompt. They also, though, in addition to making development tools, because clearly they're programmers who make programming tools, they use those programming tools to make games. Now, you've heard of these. Well, at least two of them. They've made a game called Nour, Play With Your Food, an interactive exploration into the aesthetics of food. I never heard of that. But they've also made Firewatch and Untitled Goose Game. Those are the two games that they've made.
Two games that if I had to describe them in one word, they are both each a triumph.
Yes. So now they have ventured into the realm of hardware and have made a handheld video game system in cooperation with Teenage Engineering. You can go to the website for Teenage Engineering if you're not familiar with them. I think we've mentioned them on the show at least once before. They make a lot of, not very nicely designed hardware with a particular aesthetic to it. Very sort of a DIY, but still slick and stylish kind of combination going on. They've got a really nice, if you want to make a mini ITX computer, it's $200, but they've got a really nice, like, flat pack, like, steel case you can put it in. You can only put a tiny power supply in there, but, it's still, I'd put a computer in there, right? I don't know for $200, but,
Well, they're going to release soon the stereo dock where you slide the Playdate into the front, and now it's a little cube that sits on your desk and has a big speaker.
Oh, yeah. But I'm talking about Teenage Engineering and the things that they make, right? They make a lot of synthesizer things and stuff like that. Okay, but the Playdate itself is a handheld game console, much like a Game Boy. It's got a D-pad, an A and a B button, right? a speaker. It's got a USB-C connector, a headphone hole.
You're leaving the most fascinating thing for last, clearly.
Well, look, but on top of all that, it's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, right? Pretty impressive. An internal battery that just recharges and lasts us a really long time. And the number one feature it has is the crank. On the right side of this thing is this crank. You can flip it out and crank it forward or backwards, right? Clockwise or counterclockwise, but it's really towards you or away from you.
I haven't touched one yet, but I imagine the crank feels really good.
Yeah, this as physically constructed, like it's not super like tough and solid, but it's like pretty good, right? I pre-ordered the thing, right? And so it showed up, and I guess they're slowly rolling them out. But yeah, it's pretty solid. You are not, the crank itself, you don't feel like this crank is going anywhere. You can crank it, with confidence.
Yeah.
I think the major flaw in the device really is that it's kind of thin, which is actually very nice. It's nice and small, right? It's like a square, and it's maybe like not even a centimeter thick, barely, right? And the buttons are really good, but it's not very ergonomic to hold. It's just a flat square.
I've seen a lot of complaints about that. People can't play it for more than an hour, or their thumbs or their wrists start to hurt.
Yeah, the crank is like on the side, and it's like, in the way a little bit if you're trying to play with just the buttons normally, right? And when you go for the crank, you're trying to hold the device with your left hand and crank with your right hand, and it's like, it's sort of tough to do that. And then if you're left-handed, there's like upside down modes and other accessibility modes, but like you got to turn the thing upside down and now you can crank. But if there's a game that requires crank plus buttons, left-handed people are going to be in trouble, right? Because the crank is on the right side. So that's another issue. So It's not perfect, but considering what it is, it's pretty impressive. It's also surprisingly open, right? In terms of it's very well documented. They've got all these SDKs and APIs. You can make software for it, no problem. You can push a button combination and mount it like a USB drive. It has 4 gigabytes of storage. You could just put files on there, take files off. Hope you don't mess it up, right? And software-wise, it's like, it's actually pretty strong. It's like you can do whatever the hell you want with this thing, right? Side loading other games. Go buy a game on itch.io and then load it in there. Make a game, load it in there, right? Whatever you want. But if you're not a software engineer who's going to make software for this, what are you going to play on here, right? What's the point? So the point is that they got some cute little games that are not available on literally any other platform whatsoever, right? It's like, I guess you could run their little, the same simulator they have, for development and try to load games into that and play them, right? But you'll have to use like an on-screen crank, right? So it's sort of like, pirating a DS game with that, and you don't have a stylus or a touchscreen or anything. It's like, you can't really play it. Or pirating Wii Sports and you don't have any Wiimotes. It's like, can't really pirating Duck Hunt. That, it's like you need the crank, right? Otherwise, you could make a crank of some kind and play with that, or get some other analog. You could get an Atari paddle maybe, as long as it can spin forever. I don't know. You glue a little stick to the side of the Atari paddle and then maybe make a crank. Anyway, so yeah, what are you going to do with it if you're not developing software? Well, you're going to play the games that other people have made, right? That's what you're going to do. So besides, I haven't side-loaded or downloaded any games. And if you don't do that, the way it works is that when you first buy the device and turn it on, there will be 2 games already there for you. And it connects to Wi-Fi, and it'll update its OS and update its own games, right, for you. And so those 2 games that it comes with out of the start are Casual Birder, which is sort of like a RPG, like you walk around talking to people, but you also take pictures of birds, and you have to use the crank to focus the camera. And it's a little bit of like a, it's a challenge to try to get some of these birds in focus, right? Because they're moving fast, and you can only aim your camera at part of the screen. You're trying to use the crank to focus and the D-pad to move the camera at the same time, and push A to take the picture. It's somewhat, challenging skill test, other than, the JRPG part where you walk around and talk to people. I'd say that's a good game, right? It's like, I'll play it, right? Another game, Whitewater Wipeout, is a surfing high score game. It's sort of like a Tony Hawk, right? Kind of deal. You're trying to surf and do flips in the air and whatnot, and you control it entirely with the crank. And when you get big air on the surfboard, and you can spin the crank really fast to do a bunch of flips, sort of like a ski-free, I guess, a ski-free jump, right?
All right.
And that part, makes sense for the crank. The mapping of the cranking to the surfboard doing 360s in the air. But when you're in the water trying to pick up speed, the crank is not good. It's like you much rather have the Atari paddle than the crank, right? It's kind of annoying. So, but it's just to try to get a high score, do the best surf, right? Without before you wipe out game.
But I think the real cool part is not necessarily any of these individual games that you've described, but the fact that it comes with a game season of 12 weeks worth of games.
You get those 2 games, right? And those games are the start of season 1. And then on Monday, or at least I guess, I don't know exactly how it works, but for me it was Monday, the LED on the top of it lights up purple, right? Like I woke up and there was a purple, like different colored light coming out of the top of this, the near the power button. And it was like, hey, new games, right? And I pick it up, and during the night, it had loaded over Wi-Fi 2 more games that were part of season 1, which is included in the cost of the device. Like if you get the device, you get season 1. And someone else who got their console earlier than me has already received games from week 3. So it's like, even if you buy a Playdate next year, you'll experience like this slow rollout of all the season 1 games, 2 games per week, a week at a time, right? So you don't just get all the games at once. You could go out and sideload them, find wherever they are somewhere and load them in. But if you just stick to the default experience, it's like, yeah, you're just it's like, and that goes with the name of Playdate, right? It's like every week, it's like it's like, hey, I'm shining this purple light. Come poke at me a little bit, right? And
that's where I see, like, I didn't get it, partly because I don't feel like it'll have a lot of staying power for me, but I'm intrigued by this idea because, one, I'm a big fan of relatively low tech or easy to mess with hardware as a teaching tool and a learning tool. And
the back of it has 4 screws. You can take the back of this off and mess with it. I haven't opened it yet, but it's just 4 normal screws to open it up and see what's inside.
Yep. But it's such good hardware, and it's simple enough to where this is what I would use in like a class to teach kids how to make games, like using the developer tools. It's also an art project, like this idea of buy this hardware, here's a season of little like small games to play. Like
I do think it's a lot more art software than game, right?
None of these are going to replace like Super Mario Land 2 on the original Game Boy or anything like that. Like this is not that kind of game.
Right. So the second week, the 2 games I got are Boogie Loops. So Boogie Loops is not a game. It is basically Mario Paint Music Maker, but you can also, there's these dancing characters and you can control their dance to match your music, right? In synchronization. It's not very advanced. Mario Paint Music might be more advanced. It's hard to say.
Well, remember, Mario Paint Music didn't have any animated characters. You had to make a separate animation. And it also didn't have
literally just like, like there's 5 characters: panda, cactus, pizza, bunny, and maybe.
Does it have sharps and flats?
It's not. It's really not.
Okay, because Mario Paint originally did not have sharps or flats.
Then it's like, so you have a lineup at the top of all these characters. So let's say you set all the characters to be the pizza character, right? And then it's like you choose, like, there's a sequencer, right? It's like, the bar is moving from left to right and then looping back to the start again. And you insert dances. You're like, do this, do the wave, then do this dance, then do that, right? It's very, it's not that exciting. I poked it for a minute and I was like, oh, it just makes loops really simply. The end. I'm good. I see what you did there. So yeah, that's a thing. The most real game so far is Crankin's Time Travel Adventure, right? which is basically, at first, I didn't understand this game. There's this guy, and he's got a date at 3:00. It goes to his house, where you crank. All you do is crank. You don't do anything else. You crank it, and you see him in his house sleeping at 3:00. The clock is in, right? It's like you start cranking, and time starts moving forward. He wakes up. Goes out of the house. He starts running to meet his date, right? And in level 1, you basically just crank forward and you get to the date, and then she gets mad and like hits him or kicks him in the junk or whatever.
Yeah.
You can crank backwards to wind back the clock. But that doesn't wind back the time. You're even, when you wind back the clock, you're even later for your date, right? The time is moving forward. You're just moving, the dude on his walk, right? From left to right, you're moving him forwards and backwards on this predetermined course. So I thought that I failed, but it went to level 2 and I cranked forward and I succeeded at level 2. And then level 3, I cranked forward and I didn't know that I didn't think I succeeded because I got kicked in the nuts,
yeah.
Right?
Well, it turns out it sounds like it's a Nidhogg situation.
Right. And level 3, I cranked forward and I got a different ending, right? It's like there was this butterfly and there was a little circle and it showed the girlfriend's face being upset. And I was like, I guess I didn't make it there in time. The butterfly was just indicating that she had left. She didn't wait for me, right? Because I was so slow. So I'm like, do I need to improve my times at the other levels to get it, to be fast enough? Like, what do I need to do here? I thought I had failed, right? At levels 1, 2, and 3. But apparently that's not the case. Getting kicked in the junk is actually a success. And that's
I'm telling you, Nidhogg.
Yeah. Once I realized that, I realized, oh, I know how to play this game now. It's that I was failing the 3rd level because I touched the butterfly. That's why I failed. Right? What you had to do was actually, when you had to go right enough so the butterfly would appear, and then go left, crank backwards. There were these flowers that he was stopping to sniff. You have to stay sniffing the flower until the butterfly passes overhead, then crank forward again, right? So it's sort of a platformy obstacle game, but your only controls are move forward and backward, and you have to use the environment to avoid these various attacking animals like herds of wild pigs and butterflies and birds, and right? It's like, there's a desk that he stops when he gets to a cafe. It's actually like a chair and a table. When he gets to that, he'll sit in the chair, drink, take a sip, and then he'll jump over the table to go forward. It's like when there's pigs running on the ground, you have to get yourself up on the table and stop until the pigs go past, right? So it's actually pretty clever. I've only done 10 or so levels. Other people have done tens of levels. I don't know how many total levels there are, but it's actually kind of a game, kind of interesting, good idea, good execution. I think the one thing all these games have in common is just, artistically, right? The visuals and the sounds are really, really well crafted. And I think this is the thing that stood out to me when I was trying to just make a Hello World software for this, is that the screen is literally 1-bit color. It's black or white. You can't make a gray pixel, right? That's it. But the resolution is actually significant. It's 440 by 220 or something, and the pixels are small. So you can make a pretty high resolution thing on there. It's not easy to draw something compelling, right? It actually, takes a lot of artistic skills to do these smooth animations. The frame rate's really good. There's not a lot of ghosting on the animation, right? So to make, animated characters and scenes, right, with only black and white, and with that high refresh rate it's kind of a challenge. And a lot of, the demo, when you turn the device on for the first time, is actually pretty impressive looking. Someone made that. It's wow, that's you think, in 2022, you're supposed to be impressed by highest resolution 3D CG shit that looks like real life. But I was more impressed by these 1-bit high resolution things going on here. So, yeah, that's a thing. So, would I buy this Playdate again? I mean, I would, because I'm a person who can mess with it and make software for it and whatever. If you're not, it costs $180, and that's without any accessories or anything.
Yep. I mean, the reason I avoided it was partly just that even though it's tiny, I'm trying to avoid collecting any more physical stuff unless I am going to use that stuff for a very long time or have some like specific need for it.
So
I think it's cool.
Right?
I'll probably acquire one to poke at some point, probably when someone else is done with theirs, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, $180 is a lot for what this is, even considering you get the season of games. I do really like, though, the season of games concept, right?
It's yeah.
How many times do you go buy a bundle of games and you don't even play all of them, right? Like whatever. And, it's like having a system that automatically, right, is like, imagine if you didn't have any, you just like, you took your Steam library and it was hidden from you. And then on, Monday, it comes out and is like, hey, here's one game. This is your game for the week. This is your new, fresh game. It would seem fresh, new, and exciting. Yeah. Right? And if that game was not some big, giant game like, Skyrim or something, but was like a small amusement of just like a few minutes or, an hour or two, right? It would be like, oh, it's sort of like the Sunday crossword puzzle almost, right? It's like this thing you do for a small period of time every week, right? There it is. It's compartmentalized. It's a fresh thing that happens, and then it's gone and out of mind, right? It's not some thing you have to dedicate to or invest in, right? But then you forget about it, but then it comes back again, right? A week later, like, hey, here's another little video game that's, for you to enjoy for an hour or whatever, right? I'm blinking my purple light again at you. Hey, listen, right? It's like, that's a pretty good model for the times we live in.
It's the kind of, and also it's just the kind of device, like the whole thing as a package. Like you said, it's almost more an art project or an art piece than it is a gaming console. And I'm glad it exists, even though I don't necessarily want to get one, or at least not pay full price for one. And I really want to see if anyone does some fun, cool stuff with this.
Yeah, I do think there is potential.
I think you're going to see a lot of these at like coding summer camps down the road.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of potential here, but at least the 4 games I've played, the potential has not yet been fulfilled. There might be other games coming down the line. We'll see what's what. But yeah, it's, if you're the right kind of person that this is for, then you probably have already pre-ordered one.
Yep.
Right. And if it's not, it's like, all right, it's a cool thing that if you got, I don't know, a bunch of extra money, you could probably do it for the $180, right? You could buy like 3 $60 AAA video games.
I mean, for that much money, you could buy a used GBA probably and a pile of like old cartridges for it.
Yeah, you could buy like a used GBA and a flash cart, right?
Yep.
So,
but I wonder. I mean, I don't know anything about the business side of it, but I would not be shocked if the long play is to sell these to schools and camps and like educational institutions more so than the consumer market.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, I think that was a solid show.